All right, ladies and gentlemen, I did want to go over two different swing states that seemingly are slipping away from Kamala Harris. And really, the expectation here as we enter the final week is that I think a lot of liberals are going to be saying, well, when it comes to the seven swing states, Trump is going to win Arizona and also Georgia, and then maybe one other, maybe also North Carolina. But Harris is going to win the rest. They're going to have to concede, specifically Arizona and Georgia, and it's not just the betting, it's also the overall polls and also things that we've heard in both of those states. So you look at Arizona right now, Donald Trump sitting at a 74% chance to win. So it's basically 75-25, three-fourths chance for Trump. And it has been a continuous rise for Trump ever since mid-August. Mid-August, it was basically 50-50. Trump has had a very steady rise in terms of the betting. 75-25 for a swing state is pretty significant when you look at Arizona. And I remember back in early September, liberals saying it's looking bad in Arizona. It's probably not going to happen. The early voting looks good, although you can't put much stock into the early voting. Really, you look also at the polls, though, it does look very solid. You've got a Marist poll, Trump only sitting +1, but they've been a little bit more liberal this cycle. Insider advantage, Trump +3. They were really good in 2020. You've got a Bloomberg tie, which is good because Bloomberg's been more liberal this cycle. Atlas Intel has it as a tie. That's a little bit surprising, but you do have CBS News with a Trump +3. You've got Trafalgar, Trump +2. You've got that New York Times, Siena, Trump +5, an Emerson, Trump +2 as well. So this has been a consistent lead for Trump since early September in terms of the polling. Right now, Trump's sitting +1.5. It wouldn't surprise me with this Wall Street Journal falling off if Trump ended up leading the average by around 2 to 2.5 in Arizona. You can see Trump with a very nice advantage over the 2020 numbers. In late October, Biden was +2.5. Now Trump is +1.5. That is around a 4-point swing when it comes to that. Also, you had Hillary +1.5. So I think at this point, Arizona is looking very, very good for Trump. There's no doubt about it. And then the other state, obviously, when it comes to these two swing states, I'm going to be looking at is also going to be Georgia. And you look at Georgia compared to North Carolina. I mean, even North Carolina is above 70, but Georgia's sitting at 74. And we're seeing a very, very similar look I guess Trump's always been the favorite in Georgia. And Arizona, it went down to about 50-50. But you've got mid-August, you do have Donald Trump really recently expanding his lead significantly up to almost that same margin where it's a 75-25. It's getting from a very slight lean toss-up to where Trump is like, all right, Trump, even though it's a swing state, Trump's the clear favorite. And this has even more to do with the overall polls in Georgia. I mean, this thing just keeps popping up. You've got all the polls outside of Marist with Trump up, and most of them at least up by 2. I mean, look at this. His overall spread here is +2.2. I think in terms of the swing states, this is probably the most distinct lead for either candidate in any swing state. And you do have the Golden Poll, the Atlanta Journal. If you look at their 2016 and 2020 results, they were within a single point of the overall final number. And now they've got Trump up 4. So that would signal if they're correct again, and they've been very accurate in the Trump years, that's back-to-back cycles they've been accurate, it would be a Trump victory of at least 3. But even if they were a little bit inaccurate, Trump can still win it by 2.5, something like that. So when you look at polls where it's +4 and they've been very accurate the last 2 cycles, you're starting to think, well, maybe this is a state. I mean, Georgia, obviously Trump was sitting +0.4. Now he's +2.2. He barely lost Georgia by 0.3 in 2020. And then 2016, he won Georgia, I think by 4 or 5. Now he's up by 2.2. It's an improvement in terms of the polls since 2020. And the polls in 2020 and 2016 were pretty accurate in Georgia, especially 2020. So him being +2.2 and the Golden Poll out of Georgia saying he's +4. And that was their final poll that they released, by the way. They're not going to be releasing another one. You're starting to look at states, not that we can check off, but we're starting to see the separation with a Georgia and with an Arizona in specific, to where now I think a lot of liberals, it'd be hard for them to really predict Harris to win Georgia or Arizona. They're more looking at the Rust Belt because they view that as kind of her only path, along with maybe North Carolina. But even you could maybe even throw North Carolina in there, although the polls are closer in North Carolina, there's no doubt about it. We're going to go ahead and go back here and take a look at North Carolina. You can see even North Carolina is a little bit above 70-20, and it's very similar to where Trump now has a nice lead. If you also want to throw North Carolina in there, I would wait for a few more polls out of North Carolina. But the trend in North Carolina is certainly positive. You did have some Harris polls. You had a tie recently, even Bloomberg with a Trump +1, Emerson a Trump +2, Marist a Trump +2. Trafalgar going to release a new poll. Rasmussen had Trump +5. They're going to release a new poll. The Quinnipiac will probably drop out. They'll probably release a final poll. Atlas Intel had Harris +2. I think that's part of the reason people were a little bit worried about North Carolina. But if you look at the overall aggregate, Trump performing better than he did in 2020. Remember, he won the state in 2020, even though it was very close. It was 1.3. And then he also won the state by around 3 in 2016. And you would think with North Carolina, those are three huge states. You're talking about one more state to win the election, depending on what it is, if you're able to win North Carolina, Arizona, as well as Georgia. And right now, Arizona and Georgia are basically 75-25, and North Carolina is basically 70-30. Whether or not you want to put much stock into the betting, it is a nice indicator. Normally the betting's right. People always ask me, since 1980, the betting's only been wrong 2 times in terms of the favorite. If we get Trump as a favorite, the hope is maybe 65-35 like it is right now. I would take this going into election night if we could get it. I would take 62-38. But if we get Trump as the favorite going into election night, that's what we want. It's rare. And by the way, people are going to talk about 2016. Yes, 2016, the betting was wrong for sure, but it's only happened 2 times, like 8 of the last 10 years. It might even be like 12 of the last 14 presidential elections. The betting's gotten it right. The favorite is won. So you want to be the favorite, guys. Trust me, I know 2016, it was an outlier, but you do want to be the favorite. I'm not just saying that because Trump's the favorite right now. You want that. 2020, obviously, Trump was not the favorite. He still could have won, but that was another horrible polling mess that I don't think is going to happen in 2024, because if it did happen, Trump would blow Harris out and probably win the popular vote by 4 or 5 points. Another thing I want to talk about, you've got some of these pollsters, like there was the ABC that had Harris +4. I think there's Big Village, Big Daddy, whatever that pollster is, that just came out that had Harris +7. That is a general election popular vote that has Harris +7. I legitimately think it's impossible for Harris to win the popular vote by 4 or 7 or whatever, based off of the indicators that we've seen. And we've got a final CNN poll that has the generic ballot +3 Republican. We have the Gallup Party ID, which is the gold standard, that has Republican advantage by 2.5. We have Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster in 2020, that's had Republican +3 in their last 3 polls. This is a clear electorate that's going to be Republican. I mean, if the electorate actually is Republican +2 or +3, the election's over. Trump's going to win. I mean, that's just the reality. But all of these indicators are saying that this isn't even a 50-50. If you oversample Dems by even 2 or 3, you're off, and you're actually overfavoring Dems based off of this electorate. The current electorate is either 50-50 or it might even lean slightly conservative. If you want to look at the number one most accurate indicator, you should be oversampling Republicans by 2 or 3. And even CNN has generic ballot Republicans +3. So when you see these polls that have Harris up by 4, Harris up by 7, they're oversampling Dems. They have to, especially if they have independents basically being tied, which a lot of these polls do. And you've got like Big Daddy, Big Village, that's the pollster name. They've got Harris +7. It makes no sense. And they're just oversampling Dems. And because we're seeing the generic ballot and we're seeing the gold standard polls say, if you actually want to look at who's vote, in terms of the electorate, it's probably a Republican advantage or it's tied. And if that's the case, it's a very good news for Trump. It's going to mean Harris is going to have to win over independents in a lot of these Rust Belt states. But I think what Harris and their supporters are going to say, well, we're going to go for Pennsylvania, we're going to go for Michigan, and we're going to go for Wisconsin. And I think that they're going for broke with the Rust Belt. I think they kind of have to. I mean, you could also say maybe she'll win Nevada. I mean, a lot of this has been early voting, why this has moved. It's not like there's been a crazy, I think there's been better polling for Trump, but this has really moved with the early voting. It was 50-50. Now Trump's up to around 63-64 with the Clark County stuff. And apparently they're giving more money to Sam Brown because the early voting, the Republican Party is, because of how crazy the early voting is in Nevada. And it's not like Nevada's a state Republicans lost by 10 points in 2020. It's a very winnable state. And so you could also be looking at Nevada possibly becoming a safer Trump state if the early voting trend continues right before the election. And now we're talking about Trump locked and loaded, winning Nevada, winning Arizona, winning Georgia, possibly a big favorite in North Carolina, and then just picking off one of these Rust Belt states. This is why you wanted that Nebraska winner-take-all scenario. But listen, maybe you look at Virginia, and maybe Trump is trying to expand his math and doing that rally in Virginia next Saturday. That's crazy. With Youngkin and hopefully Tulsi Gabbard is there. I think that would be really appealing to a lot of the voters there, a lot of the independents maybe that voted for Youngkin, slight Democrats that voted for Youngkin cross ballot. But listen, we'll have to see what happens. If Trump is able to pick off Virginia, he can lose all of the Rust Belt. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying he's going to lose the Rust Belt. I think he'll easily, I don't know about easily, but it looks like Pennsylvania, it's looking very good. Democrats, Fetterman is like, it's just not going to happen in Pennsylvania. You're going to lose. And so there's no other paths for them if they do lose Pennsylvania, because they've already lost Arizona and Georgia. Just like I said, I'm being, I'm exaggerating. Everyone needs to vote and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, when I'm analyzing this, I'm seeing Georgia and Arizona with a clear trend, not only in betting, but also in the polls to Trump, to where it seems like liberals are trying to do this new math. Originally, what they did is they said, well, Trump's going to win Pennsylvania, but Harris is going to win Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and North Carolina. But now it looks like both Nevada and even North Carolina are swinging North Carolina even over Nevada, which is what you would want because it's got more electoral votes. They're swinging more to the right. And so they're pigeonholed now into the Rust Belt as their only path. And Trump might be even trying to expand his path to where he doesn't even have to win the Rust Belt, but I think he's going to sweep the Rust Belt as well. I've got him winning all 7 of the swing states. I'm just analyzing this, giving potential options on what could happen. So right now, the states I'm looking at are Georgia and Arizona, specifically trending to Trump at around 75-25. You do also have North Carolina above that 70% mark. You're getting Nevada possibly close. It's at 65. And then you do have the 3 Rust Belt states, with Pennsylvania being the one that's 60-40. I would say it's a slight Trump lean. We've seen positive polls out of Pennsylvania. The Michigan one has gone down for Trump. That's because you got 2 liberal pollsters, Quinnipiac and Bloomberg, release a Harris +4 and a +3, and that brought it down a bit because it was around like 57 for Trump, but it's gone down to 53. I do think Michigan is the most liberal Rust Belt state. And then Wisconsin sitting Trump 57. I think Trump is going to win Wisconsin by maybe around 2.5 points, maybe even more than Pennsylvania. It's hard to predict that, but right now I would say Pennsylvania 2 to 2.5, Wisconsin probably about 2, and then Michigan's probably going to be within a point. I think Michigan's probably going to be the closest swing state. I think Trump could win Nevada by more than people expect. We really don't know. We're kind of going into Nevada blind because it's like around 50-50, but the early voting is favoring Republicans. There's a lot more enthusiasm for Republicans. Maybe Sam Brown wins the Senate there if Trump can win by 3 or 4. It'll be interesting. But either way, guys, that is just the current, we'll take this. These are great. This is great. You'll take a 65-35. You've got a Senate right now sitting 83-16, 83-17, whatever you want to say. And that's with Moreno up to around 61%. Sheehy winning Montana for sure. Cruz holding on to Texas, and Rick Scott obviously holding on to Florida. And that's with liberals taking all of the Rust Belt states. There's been some positive polls for McCormick. McCormick's gone up to 31, so it's basically 70-30. Rogers at around 32, and Hovde at around 33. Very, very similar in the Rust Belt. Republicans needs to try and pick off one of these seats in the Rust Belt. I think they could win any of them. They'll at least take 1, maybe 2, possibly both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. That's 2 more seats for Republicans right there. You hold Montana, or you take Montana, and you take Ohio. Now you're expanding now, and you're also maybe looking at, Sam Brown. He might have actually went up. He's at around 24%. Now you're talking about Nevada. This is going to be big when it comes to the 2026 midterms, not favoring Republicans to potentially try and get 54, 55 seats and really run it up if Trump is able to win the popular vote. If you want to look at the popular vote right now, do a quick update on this. You are looking at around a 60-40 still. So that's the standard. That's what we've seen the past few days. Trump is moving up in terms of the popular vote, but it's been kind of stagnant around 60-40 with Harris at around 60 in terms of that. I don't know if it's going to move at all with the ABC News Harris +4 poll, but right now it is 60-40. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.